Today, on the very first Songmaker, we're starting work on a brand new rock song built on a drum loop and examining what kind of effect that has on this song, which is a whole lot of 9 Inch Nails, maybe a tiny bit of Portugal the Man, but definitely a whole heaping dose, a veritable cornucopia of my personal political opinions. This is not going to go well. Hey guys, Stijn here and welcome to the inaugural episode of Songmaker, a series where we examine interesting musical ideas as they come up through my process of writing, performing, recording, producing and mixing my own music. As a massive overthinker who always wants to do everything himself, it's kind of like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I get to both work on all my skills at once and reflect on the music, why certain choices work, why other choices don't. We'll get into it. It's also a great way to encourage myself to actually keep on writing, recording, and releasing new music. Today, we're talking about a song I built on top of a drum loop that goes on non-stop and hardly ever changes. What effect does that have on the song, especially in rock music that's usually way more dynamic? All of that and more later. As of right now, I have, I think, about 40 to 50 musical ideas lying around in varying stages of development, from mumbly off-key piano demos to reasonably thought-out full rock band demos on my computer. But you know how it goes, not all of these I'm equally as excited about, and more importantly, not all fit the style of music I like to make under the alias Peacekeeper, which, just to be clear, is a mix of accessible and melodic stadium, pop rock, and gloomy, melancholic grunge. For a taste of that, you can check out my debut solo EP. It's called Well This Took Forever. It's out now on streaming. Go check it out. It's pretty good, I think, but what do I know? But as I say in my EP release video, that EP was recorded a long time ago. And, you know, my taste has changed. Right now in 2021, it includes more beat-focused and groove-oriented music, and also more electronic sounds by way of industrial music or modern pop, or also some more hip-hop. So I wanted to start with this song in particular because it reflects that change in a big way. So here we go! The song we're going to work on is called This Is an Illusion, and as is way too common with me, it's been coming together over months and even years, to say nothing of ever even actually recording it. I'll usually get a fraction of a melody or a phrase in my head while doing something mundane like grocery shopping, and hopefully I'm in a position where it's not too awkward to just quietly start singing into my phone. Otherwise it could disappear just as quickly as it appeared. I'm not that great at just plucking something out of thin air whenever it's needed. Most of my own stuff that I like best has been spawned from one of these moments of inspiration, however cliche that might sound. So, in scrolling through my voice memos, the first instance of the line "This is an illusion" comes from February 7th, 2018, more than 3 years ago. Check this out. This is an illusion. Mm-hmm. This is an illusion. Mm-hmm. It's a totally different melody and I'm completely out of breath walking at a train station in the middle of the night, and I'm humming some other riff at the end, but I like the phrase. Telling someone you're being lied to is pretty potent lyrical material, both emotionally and sort of societally. I usually try to write lyrics that are both personal and universal at once, like It Wasn't Hard Enough, and in this case I really wanted to write a political song. Like probably most of you, I've become much more politically engaged over the past few years, since, you know, everything's going so well and we're not tearing each other apart at all, and you know, if that were the case, I'd really need a place to vent that frustration, maybe write a song about it. Here's the first real glimpse of the skeletal structure of the song. Just a riff, a verse, and a chorus, which is pretty much the bare minimum considering this was recorded almost a full year later. This is your revolution. It started with the melody and harmony to the chorus arriving in my head practically fully formed. Yes, literally while I was grocery shopping, but that's probably why it's arguably the part that stands on its own the best. I ran back to my studio, grabbed an acoustic, tuned the drop C and recorded this memo. If you were the one. No love melodies that sort of linger on notes as the harmony changes underneath. In this case, even from the minor 6th to the major 6th chord, which happens here. I also really like smooth, airtight falsetto vocals, kind of like what you hear on Feel It Still by Portugal the Man. Sometimes it's a good idea to double those an octave down as well, so they aren't too shrill. I like to keep my idea recordings pretty rough, so I lower my chances of getting demo-itis, where you're getting attached to stuff that doesn't necessarily work. But wait, isn't this video titled something like building a track on top of a drum loop? Well, yes. This is the point in time where I committed to that idea. The reason I decided to do this, to keep the groove the same throughout pretty much the entire track, is twofold. First of all, at medium tempos or above, it gives a track a tremendous amount of forward momentum, since the energy level never ever falls. And secondly, once you, as a listener, realize that the groove is a constant, it sort of disappears into the track a bit, and everything that's happening on top gets your undivided attention. Anyway, from this kind of 9-inch nailsy chorus harmony that keeps moving between minor and major, came the idea to build the track to an almost completely non-stop looped drum groove, which then led me to the new riff. Which is just the dumbest thing, but that's kind of what I like about it. It's very boneheaded and sludgy, but also dark, kind of funky with its very prominent dominant chord. In contrast to the first riff, it's also super staccato and on beat, specifically to fit with the vague idea of the drum loop I had in my head at this point. A thing that happens when your groove is the same throughout the entire song is that obviously you're more limited in whatever rhythms you put over the top of it. This is also the first time I tried to play the song as a whole, figuring out the lengths of sections where needed and whether the song needed a bridge at all, specifically this one. I really liked this bridge idea, but in the end I decided against it. I felt that the song moved at a pretty quick pace already, a lot happens, especially in the verses, and put simply, there were enough elements that weren't played out yet. So I went with the more cohesive option and just reused the second part of the verse, but more intense, so I also had somewhere to go lyrically. Speaking of lyrics, let's go over some stuff. It's one of the aspects of the track I'm most proud of at this point in time. Of course, not a lot else has happened so far, so there's got to be some elements that make me want to continue working on it. They're really direct. I don't often use a ton of abstract visual language or metaphors. More often I'll write almost completely direct and personal lyrics that work as an allegory for a much bigger subject. Like a lot of rock songs, it's an angry song, or to be more specific, it's very frustrated and exasperated. And in this case, that anger and frustration comes from my personal feelings about recent developments on a political and societal level. I don't feel like getting angry at the camera. YouTube has more than enough of that, so I'll just leave it at this. It's a song about the rise of far-right anti-establishment politicians around the globe, who through both social and regular media channels substitute objective truth and facts for a one-sided xenophobic narrative wherein they're both brave paragons of truth and pitiful victims of any number of conspiracies at the same time. The chorus lyrics gave me major headaches, and I still don't know if I've nailed it, or if it's even at all possible to nail what I want to say with words that sound good, sing well, rhyme, and fit this very rigid melody and meter. As you've heard, like a lot of people, I write melodies phonetically, and what in my experience has often happened is that once people need to write actual words, they often find it impossible to write words that have the right meaning, have that hooky quality like a bumper sticker, while still preserving those vowel sounds and the meter that make the melody work in the first place. It's one of my least favorite feelings in the world, falling out of love with the song as it approaches the finish line. Well, that hasn't happened here yet. And as of right now, I love this chorus very much, thank you. After all this, I knew I did actually want to make a demo of the song, as I really needed to figure out how the groove-based arrangement was gonna work. I combined it with a test for a snare drum mic, as I was gearing up for recording a really cool band called Minor Citizen at that point. I started with a guide guitar track to a click, not using an amp or amp sim at all, because I'm a huge fan of distorting DI'd guitars. a thing Trent Reznor loves to do as well. Recording guitars like this is a lot more ugly and scratchy than what Amp Drive will give you. Next, I played some quick 4-mic drums on that, and I know, blasphemy, but I found that I did want to break the looping groove at times, especially on the third line of the chorus, because the melody and harmony changed slightly to having more syncopation, and as a drummer and Soundgarden fanboy, I just couldn't resist going full Matt Cameron on those sludgy guitars, hanging on that ride bell in all that space. That also happens on the bridge-verse thing, as the harmonic rhythm of the verse has become super syncopated once you play the guitars more legato, or smeared together, if you will. And as the final variation, the 4 hits at the end of the verses are in 3/4 time, so you couldn't really play that groove there anyway. Alright, so now I finally had the drum groove I was gonna build on. After some 1-minute drum mixing, I doubled the guitar, played the bass part and did a scratch vocal, just to have something to work with. Now, something that happens if you build a track on a drum groove that's non-stop and looped is that you do essentially lose one of your main building blocks of the track, and arguably the one that most directly provides energy, the drums, as a way to build dynamics and differentiate sections from one another. So you need to be extra precise in how you arrange the other parts, because they need to make the ebb and flow of the track happen while just not being as punchy or pumping in nature. You have to be aware of the texture and dynamic impact each individual element adds to the song, as sound and texture and harmonic and melodic information become even more important when you're at mostly the same dynamic or energy level. My favorite example of that is that here I leave the bass out completely until the right moment when dropping in gives maximum impact to the arrangement. Something as simple as leaving it out in verse 1A and sliding it towards the second part of that verse here makes it have way more dynamic development heading into those big descending chords and then the chorus. You usually don't miss elements you haven't heard yet, so there's a lot you can keep in your back pocket. That's good to be aware of, especially in this case. If you were the one. In this demo, I don't really do it a lot yet, as, well, none of this is final, but it's a good idea when figuring out parts to play to be aware of where your part should sit in the mix, which is obviously extra important here. So, in the final production, I intend to play with that a lot more. For example, making the first verse a single guitar and vocal, and for example the chorus vocal, which you can already tell need to be sung falsetto, pretty softly and intimate, doubling those super tightly like 3 to 5 times, plus some lower octaves, so the chorus vocals are super tight and upfront and huge. At this point, I didn't really have a definitive ending yet. I wanted to end on those 4 descending big chord hits that lead into the chorus every time, as they end on the major version of the tonic, which is the main chord of the song, but with that low down-tuned C string, so it would feel kind of bright, but also pretty heavy. In the end, I decided to go with the intro riff again, but not in an euphoric or aggressive or super rocky kind of way, more in a sort of cynical, deflating sense, which fits pretty well lyric-wise, I think. So there you have it. We're pretty much at the point where we can start laying down actual instruments for realsies. Seeing as I'll be doing all of this myself, as that's part of the challenge, I'll lay down one instrument at a time, starting with the drums, of course. It's going to be very interesting figuring out how organic and rocking versus looped and electronically produced the drums should be. So stay tuned for part 2, where we get all up in the weeds about playing and producing and mixing. It's going to be good, it's going to be fun. See you soon. Bye.